Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNate at BloodyElbow.com in the MMA Bunker. The blinds are drawn, the doors are locked. The Earl Grey tea and a blend of menthol cigarettes and Copenhagen has been snuffed, and I'm ready to rant. What a weekend. Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor. Quick bucks were raked in, but where does that leave us? Nowhere. Nothing coming up next. There's not another super fight like this in the works. There's not ever going to be another super fight like this. Ever, really. And that leaves you asking why. Why did they do this? There's a simple answer. Everybody did it for the money. Floyd Mayweather apparently had some tax issues, cash flow crunch. The man's obviously made hundreds of millions of dollars in his incredible career. And yet, with an entourage the size of Texas and a gambling habit allegedly even bigger, he gets into cash flow crunches. That's just a reality. You got a lot of money sunk into hard, illiquid assets like houses and cars. You got a lot of bills to pay, a lot of cash going out. You need to get some cash going in. And that lets you predict what Floyd Mayweather may do next. He's carefully managed his career, brilliantly managed his career up to this point, taking Conor McGregor for an easy 50-0 was nothing but smart. I mean, that was the biggest money fight he could take and the easiest fight he could take. Way easier than a rematch with Canelo, way easier than fighting Golovkin. It was the smart money move, and Floyd is generally the smart money, except when he's gambling, because you're never the smart money when you're betting a casino. The casino always wins. So my prediction is that Floyd Mayweather runs short of cash again sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, and despite the fact that he was noticeably aged in this performance, will be forced to fight somebody who is going to be a much tougher challenge for him and could quite potentially lose. You've got it here first. 50-1 is how Floyd Mayweather is going to go out. Conor McGregor, on the other hand, he did this because he's dramatically underpaid in the UFC compared to his value. He's shown it. I mean, this guy is one of the two biggest names in combat sports. He can draw a crowd, and he can put on a credible performance. Now, you can't make a career and continue to be a superstar with credible performances. He's going to have to go back to MMA where he can win, and he's probably going to continue handpicking his fights. He's already raced through the featherweight division and moved on. I predict he races through the lightweight division where he took the title from Eddie Alvarez. Never defended his featherweight belt. I predict he'll never defend his lightweight belt because the money fights are against Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz. I predict he fights Nate Diaz this winter, beats him, and then takes on big brother Nick next spring. And then that sets up a rematch if it is at all a credible match, which I expect it will be, as Diaz is considerably bigger than Conor and should present some challenges. If Nick wins, Conor obviously will get a rematch. If Conor wins, and it's close, I predict there will be a rematch. So that lays out the next year and a half for Conor. I don't know how much longer he'll fight after that, but he's already blown up the UFC's business model completely. Every fighter in the UFC has seen what's going on with Conor McGregor, contrasts it to the diminishing fortunes of they are experiencing playing the rules as they were written by Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta over the past decade. They see there's more money in boxing. They see that money fights are what moves the needle. They see that working your way up through the ranks, keeping your head down, and defending your belt is a loser's way out. And that brings us to the UFC. They did it for the money too. Why? Because they're desperate for cash. They borrowed billions of dollars to buy the UFC last year. And their pay-per-view revenues are way, way down. Their reputed 30% of Conor McGregor's 30% of the $100-something million purse for this fight, plus pay-per-view points. We don't know what they'll get on the back end. That's a nice cash infusion, but it doesn't make up for the numerous Ronda Rousey fights they didn't have this year, the numerous Conor McGregor fights they didn't have this year. They had the one John Jones fight, which obviously there won't be a sequel to unless a miracle is pulled. And WADA and USADA are wrong about John Jones's steroid use status. So that leaves WME desperate for cash flow, desperate to pay back the interest on their loans because they bought a property that was already up to its ears in debt. The Fertittas had borrowed $500 million a decade ago and never paid back any of the principals, reportedly. They just paid the interest and then cashed out the maximum for themselves every quarter. And when you do that, you leave the company shell carrying more and more debt. So WME is desperate for cash infusions. And that means what's next for the UFC? Well, that's the big problem, isn't it? I mean, you look, the most exciting, I mean, back in the day, when you thought about UFC, if you were a fan, you thought about potential super fights you'd like to see. Oh, man, I'd like to see Randy Couture versus Fedor Emelianenko. I'd like to see Brock Lesnar versus Fedor Emelianenko. I'd like to see GSP jump up a division and fight Anderson Silva, etc., etc. We got some of those super fights. They tend to happen late in careers and always be disappointing. But these days, there aren't even any super fights you can imagine. I mean, what's getting people excited? Demetrius Johnson stepping up to fight Cody Garbrandt? Really? I mean, that's not a super fight. That's not a dream fight. Max Holloway fighting Conor McGregor. I mean, real fight fans can dream. Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Conor McGregor. Tony Ferguson versus Conor McGregor. We can dream about that stuff, but that's not going to happen, and it's also not going to be a big money fight. Those are dream fights for the hardcores. But let's run through these divisions and look at them. I mean, Stipe Miocic, the heavyweight champion, he's basically holding out until he gets more money. And then the rest of the division is just, I mean, Alistair Overeem, way past his sell-by date. Fabricio Verdum, again. Cain Velasquez, injured, out for a long time. Francis Ngannou, I mean, he's an up-and-comer, but he's not quite ready for the title fight. I mean, he's not a big money fight yet. This is a kid who could be a star, but isn't yet. Then you got light heavyweight. What a disaster with the downing of John Jones. Daniel Cormier tarnished by the loss to John Jones, despite the steroid testing, putting a question mark or an asterisk by that loss. Alexander Gustafsson out there. I mean, obviously, if Jones had managed to pass his drug tests, you'd have some potential in light heavyweight for a rematch with Gustafsson. Maybe move up and fight Stipe Miocic, fight Cain Velasquez at heavyweight. You know, fight no time. There's no money in that one, but there's some action there with John Jones. With John Jones out, light heavyweight back to the shitter. I mean, frankly, there's just nothing there. And then at middleweight, Michael Bisping's going to be fighting retired former welterweight champ George St. Pierre. What? Huh? That's the closest they can get for a super fight. And honestly, nobody's up for that fight. I mean, that fight is a damp squib all the way. Bisping already has the feel of a guy who's way too old and done. I mean, he beat Luke Rockhold fair and square to take the title. That was legit. But does anybody really think Bisping could beat the interim champion Robert Whittaker or Yoel Romero, the guy who lost the interim championship fight to Whittaker, or even Jacare Souza? I mean, really? You think Bisping's the best guy out there? I don't know, man. And a fight against GSP, I mean, is that really that much different than Chael Sonnen and Tito Ortiz? Is it really that much different? I don't know. On welterweight, another shit show. Tyrone Woodley put on just a series of boards against Stephen Thompson, beat Robbie Lawler, and you know, snoozed everybody against Demian Maia. I mean, it would be fun to see a rematch with Lawler at some point, but you know, Lawler lost his last fight, so you know, and Woodley annihilated him. Woodley's lusterless reign, I mean, after 2 draws and then the snooze fest against Demian Maia, nobody wants to see Woodley. And the only guy with any flair right now in the division is Jorge Masvidal, who's a total hardcore-only fighter. He's got zero traction with casual fans. Lightweight division, you know, you've got Conor McGregor mauling Eddie Alvarez and then moving on. I mean, you've got Khabib and Tony out there. They've been trying to make that fight for over a year and can't get it together. Maybe it's been 2 years. You know, Ferguson's moving on and finding somebody else. That division still has some oomph for hardcores, but otherwise a shit show. And without Conor McGregor, I mean, you know, with Conor McGregor, it's the biggest division in the sport. Without him, It's just another make work division. I mean, I would assume it'd be one of the bigger ones because it's one of the few functioning divisions, that middleweight. Then you got featherweight, Max Holloway, the new champ, bringing some new blood in there. A little bit exciting, but again, no money fights there. I mean, maybe the Korean Zombie. Yair Rodriguez was looking like he was building up a head of steam. They throw him in against the meat grinder they call Frank Yeager, gets snuffed. There's nothing happening at featherweight. Bantamweight, Cody Garbrandt, I don't even know why he hasn't fought. I mean, I don't know what the deal is. He takes the title from Dominic Cruz and then goes silent. I don't know what's next. TJ Dillashaw's out there, but that's about it for contenders. Flyweight, already mocked those poor guys. Demetrius Johnson, I mean, probably the greatest champ going in the UFC right now. Definitely the greatest champ in the UFC going right now, but has had zero popular appeal with fans, and there's really no rivals emerging for him. I mean, he's basically cleared out the division, and so moving up to fight bantamweight champ, there's some appeal there, but I mean, not much. And then the ladies divisions, women's featherweight, they finally got Cyborg in the title, but there's no division there, and who's she going to fight? Women's bantamweight, Amanda Nunes, I mean, when Ronda Rousey had the title and then she loses it to Holly Holm, the shine was transferred to Holm to some extent, to a considerable extent. But then when Holm loses to Tate, there was still some shine there. But then at the point when Nunes wrecks everybody, even winning the comeback against Ronda Rousey, there's just nothing out there. I mean, there's no oomph. And Nunes has basically already cleared out the division. And then, women's strawweight, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Joanna champion. I mean, she's badass, but she's not moving the needle. She's got her ongoing feud with Claudia Gadelha, but that's about it for intrigue. I mean, they've managed to empty the cupboards. They've farmed their seed corn. I mean, they ate their seed corn. I mean, it's just, the UFC for a long time under Zuffa, and now the new WME owned Zuffa, they've treated their fighters badly. They've treated their fans badly. Recently, they've started letting mid-tier contenders like Gegard Mousasi and Roy McDonald go to Bellator, which makes a certain amount of business sense. But, looking at some of these divisions, they could use these guys. And, it just reflects a lack of commitment to the sport. And, they've had a lack of commitment to the hardcore fans for a long time, as you can see in the way they treat Bloody Elbow and by extension our readership, and then the way they treat their customers. I mean, the shit show that was trying to watch the fight this weekend on UFC.tv, if you ordered the fight ahead of time, maybe you caught a couple undercards and then the stream died. And then if you tried to order it at fight time, no way, you're not going to order it when the service won't even come up. And now, for the reports I'm hearing from angry customers who paid for the fight, paid a lot for the fight, didn't get the fight, and now their customer service is failing them even worse than the stream did. I mean, that's just not how you build relationships with fans and not how you grow a fan base. At this point, I mean, it's almost like the UFC needs to start over. And that's why, the most intriguing thing out there is things like heavyweight champ Stipe Miocic wanting to fight emerging heavyweight boxing superstar Anthony Joshua. Who would kill him in a boxing match? Who would absolutely murder him in a boxing match? But it would be the most money Stipe is ever going to come close to. And that tells us something how fucked up it is. Michael Bisping's talking shit about, wanting to fight Tony Bellew. Jimmy Manuel wants David Haye. Junior Dos Santos calling out one of the Klitschko brothers. Cub Swanson calling out Paulie Malignaggi. I mean, the UFC fighters, I think, obviously, Cub Swanson and Junior Dos Santos and Jimmy Manuel, they're shit out of luck. But if somebody like Stipe Miocic maybe could talk his way into that with the UFC championship cachet, Bisping, maybe if he beats GSP, could do that. But I think that's sort of a trick card, a trick play that fans are going to be less and less excited by. I mean, for one thing, none of those guys is Conor McGregor, and Mystic Mac can sell a fight. Regardless of all his other many and manifest flaws, the guy can sell a fight. Bisping maybe is, Bisping can maybe sell a fight, not at all to the same extent. Those other guys are basically stiffs as far as fight selling, and the gimmick of, wow, UFC fighters are credible boxers, but they're never going to win against an elite boxer. I think people will figure out that fairly quickly, and people don't pay to see fights that they know the outcomes of. But the MMA fighters have seen how much more money there is in boxing, and they want some of that. And the public, at least for now, is intrigued by that concept. So, you know, I mean, we can hope for a new superstar to emerge, and they certainly have surprised me in the past, but at the moment, on the horizons, everything looks bleak. And that's Kid Nate with MMA Bunker. There's no, if I did it this week, Alexi's enjoying a well-earned vacation. We'll have Care Don't Care preview tomorrow with me and Eugene talking about UFC Stockholm, which I can tell you already, we don't care, or Rotterdam, or whatever the fuck it is. I mean, I looked at that card yesterday, and oh my God. Anyway, you know, and then we'll have the vivisection and the 6th round and all that. So subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Subscribe to MMA Nation on iTunes. Get the audio without the ugly. Follow me on Twitter at KidNate. Read me at bloodyelbow.com. Seems like I had one other announcement I was wanting to make, but I forgot it. So you should have a lot of luck. That's the bunker. Oh, stay dry, Houston. Stay safe. Got a lot of loved ones out there. And, you know, if you can donate money to the proper charities, we've posted something on Bloody Elbow with a guide to some recommended charities. You never know with these things, but hopefully those are charities that are going to spend your money well. And definitely if you've got a boat and you're in the Houston area, get out there and help folks. It's a great city, and it's in a lot of distress. So, adios, MMA aficionados. This is Kid Nate. We'll see you next time.